Hello! I hope you're having a good summer. I've already been on holiday, but some of you might be going on holiday only in August or September. For them, this forecast will probably be most significant. And I'm talking about the forecast for the eclipse that will occur on the 12th of August 2026. And this eclipse will determine the situation not only until September, but it will be significant until the next solar eclipse, which will occur in February 2027. Therefore, it is recommended to pay attention to the dates and periods mentioned in the forecast. They cover the period until February 2027. I can remind you how eclipses and new moons work together. Here the principle of the Matryoshka doll applies. The eclipse indicates the overall global nature of the half year, and each new moon can either amplify or weaken certain projections of the eclipse. For example, this was the case recently in the Spanish enclaves of Ceuta and another one I can't remember, which are located in North Africa on the border with Morocco. There was an influx of migrants there on the 31st of July at the beginning of August. More than 50,000 people entered there. This happened on the projection of Mars of the solar eclipse that was in February 26 and occurred near the projection of Mars, which was in the new moon that preceded these events. This new moon was on the 14th of July. The principle of how eclipses work has now become a little clearer to you. Well, I'll move on to the horoscope itself, to its projections. And we'll quickly go around the globe. The horoscope looks like this. The luminary is in Leo. A strong sun, located at 21 degrees of Leo. I immediately note that the eclipse point has no obvious tense aspects. This suggests that no very large-scale upheavals are expected in the coming half year. But we see several such energetically powerful points. I'll start with the unfavorable ones. Mars, Venus, and Neptune form a tense T-square configuration with the apex on Mars. And in this combination, it is precisely the projections of Neptune and Mars that draw attention. They can present unpleasant surprises to those who find themselves in their territory. But there is also a favorable combination. We see that Mercury is moving towards a conjunction with Jupiter. And when this happens, Mercury usually acquires the favorable qualities of Jupiter in this case. Moreover, Mercury picks up favorable rays from Uranus. This link in Leo indicates favorable circumstances for business, for art, culture, sports, for organizing festivals, public events, and for projects related to children's and youth movements. There is still an exact counter-parallel between Mars and Pluto this month. This once again indicates the significance of Mars, which will play a major role in the coming 6 months. Well, that's probably the main thing I wanted to highlight. The emergency dates are recommended to be read in the text version. I can only name the nearest ones. Just 5 days from the moment of the eclipse itself. Here, one digression needs to be made. A solar eclipse can be activated approximately 2 weeks before the actual eclipse moment. A lunar eclipse, accordingly, a week before the opposition of the Sun and Moon. A regular new moon 2 days before, and a full moon a day before the astronomical moment of the full moon. The most tense manifestation of this eclipse will most likely occur in the autumn and already in winter, including January 2027. Well, now let's move on to the geomaps, the maps of Europe. I immediately draw attention to the projection of Mars. It affects Ireland, the capital of Scotland, Edinburgh, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Between Finland and the Russian Federation, we see 2 tense projections in the north, Uranus, in central Finland, Mars. It can be said that there may be some friction between these 2 countries in the next 6 months, and they will not pass over water, not over a water boundary, but over land. The projection of Uranus also quite accurately passes through the capital of Sweden, Stockholm, which means that for this country in the next half year, upheaval is almost guaranteed because both Mars and Uranus, when working together, can guarantee this. The Baltic countries, strangely enough, are covered by favorable projections. Mercury and Jupiter, which I mentioned, here they somewhat calm the situation. These same favorable planets also affect St. Petersburg. The projection on the new moon passes through the Balkans, Albania, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, Belarus. Belarus this month and in this half year is significantly affected by Pluto, so it should be noted that the Belarusian-Ukrainian border will be under some tension. Fortunately for Belarus, Pluto in this horoscope is not the most tense planet. It would be worse if it were Mars. Moscow is in a relatively neutral, partly tense zone. Kiev is slightly more in a tense zone, but also does not have a direct aspect on the capital. There is tension in the area of Malta, in the area of southern Italy. But in general, for Italy, we see that the capital, Rome, has contact with favorable Mercury and Jupiter. So for Italy as a whole, the forecast for the next 6 months is favorable. Spain, as we see, is in a neutral zone. So I think that the development of this migration, the critical migration situation that arose between Morocco and Spain, will not be observed in the next 6 months. The projection of Mars further passes through the capital of the Chechen Republic, Grozny, affecting the capital of Iraq, Baghdad. Iraq in the next half year may experience some kind of burden. In this country, there may be terrorist attacks, there may be escalations of military activity. Iran, which is currently in a state of such a permanent war with the United States of America, partly with Israel, is under tension from the planet Saturn. It can be said that in the next 6 months, some attacks, as well as attempts to impose some new blockades against this country, will continue. We can notice that the exit from the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean is blocked by this Saturn, which means that a blockade or serious restrictions on the passage of ships through this strait may still remain. We see that Dubai, unfortunately, is affected by an unfavorable projection of Saturn. This may somehow affect the situation in the Arab Emirates, a country where many immigrants, including Russian speakers, currently reside. We see a more favorable situation in neighboring Doha compared to Dubai. In Russia, some tension can be noted in the area of Izhevsk-Orenburg, but under greater tension are Smolensk, Bryansk. This direction, Asia. I will start immediately with the projection of Mars, which in this half year will play a decisive role. Krasnoyarsk, Bratsk, Irkutsk, the capital of Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar, the capital of China, Beijing, the capital of Taiwan, Taipei, are affected very significantly by Mars. It can indicate some tension in Mongolia, and in those Russian cities I listed, there may be terrorist attacks, increased risk of fires, industrial accidents. The next half year is definitely unfavorable for China. Exceptions can only be the sparsely populated western mountainous territories of China, which border, for example, with Nepal. In the Tibet region, we still see strong tension from the projections of the luminaries and Uranus. Here, mountaineering is clearly unfavorable in the next half year. We see that the same projections of the luminaries and Uranus affect Thailand and Burma, partially Vietnam and Cambodia. The projection of Pluto, moreover, passes through eastern India, affecting Sri Lanka and the cities adjacent to this island. Among the major Indian cities, Kanpur can be noted. The favorable projection of Venus passes through Tokyo during this eclipse and promises a favorable half year for Japan as a whole. The exception is the islands adjacent to the Kuril Islands. Here we see the projection of Pluto and the projection of Saturn. Some seismic activity may affect these parts of Japan as well as Sakhalin. And finally, the favorable joint projection of Mercury and Jupiter affects Jigansk, Yakutsk, Ayan. In this Far East zone, there are favorable weather and astrological conditions for living and recreation. In Africa, I would draw attention to the favorable projections in West Africa. Here, the projection of Jupiter and Mercury creates more or less good conditions for tourism. The projection of the luminaries this month cannot cause significant harm. The projection of Pluto passes through Libya and Chad and eventually through Namibia and the capital of the Republic of South Africa. For South Africa, the next half year looks tense, but we see that the greatest focus of tension falls through the projection of Mars, affecting Yemen and Somalia. The exit from the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean is blocked by the projection of Mars. Here, terrorist attacks and possible attacks on ships are possible. Right near the port of Aden. And Madagascar is also significantly affected by the projection of Mars. Here, protests and escalation of criminal or possibly even military activity are possible. North America. The most tense projection of Mars affects the capital of Alaska. Also, the projection of Uranus passes through Alaska. It can be said that in this zone of North America, seismic activity and some unexpected emergencies are possible. Nothing passes through the capital of the USA. It can be said that the next half year for the United States does not promise any large-scale emergencies. We see mixed projections, including favorable ones of Jupiter on the Gulf of Mexico, Houston. Yes, Dallas is under some tension, as is California, with Saturn passing through Los Angeles. Usually Saturn can indicate some weather anomalies, either too dry or too wet. The most favorable conditions will develop for Vancouver and Portland thanks to the projection of Venus. In South America, we mainly see tense projections, the strongest of which is the projection of Mars, which affects Brazil passing near the capital of this country, indicating that overall the next month for Brazil may show signs of deterioration. But the most precise projection of Mars passes through the capital of Paraguay, Asunción. And in Paraguay, some protest activity is possible. An escalation of criminal activity and the likelihood of some industrial accidents. Further, the projection of Mars indicates tension within Argentina. Especially since, apart from this projection, nothing particularly favorable falls on Argentina. One can also point to an escalation again in Venezuela. Caracas is affected by the planet Uranus. Also, unexpected changes may occur in Peru because Uranus passes through the capital of Peru, Lima, and nearby the luminary also creates slight tension. In Central America, there are favorable projections that create favorable conditions for tourism, business, and leisure in the Yucatan Peninsula area in Guatemala. As for Mexico, the influence of a tense Pluto is stronger here. There might be seismic activity or some kind of pressure on this country. It's not hard to guess from whom. Australia. For Australia, the next half year is definitely tense. We see that the projection of Saturn passes through the capital of Australia. There may be situations that even indicate some kind of national mourning. Yes, Saturn often reveals its nature in this way. We see that Mars also passes through Townsville and Sydney, quite large cities on the eastern coast. This area of Australia is the most densely populated. The projection of Uranus adds tension and surprises in the areas of Esperance, Kalgoorlie, Port Hedland. That's all from me. As the horoscope of this eclipse unfolds and it influences for half a year, we need to observe the new moons, which will highlight various features of the just reviewed horoscope. All the best. Enjoy the last months of summer. All the best to you. Goodbye.